This is example 1 for the Hole Wizards and Sketch Patterns lesson. A starting point file is required. So I've begun this lesson by opening up my starting point file for exercise 1 and then saving a copy of the file in my working directory. Now the first step will be to select the top face of our part, and instead of starting a sketch, we're going to select the Hole Wizard tool. And we can now see that we're prompted with a series of specifications for our hole. We can select counterbore holes, countersunk holes, just a general hole, a tapped hole, a pipe tap, or a legacy hole. In this example, we're going to be using a tapped hole. We want to use a inch tap, use a bottoming tapped hole. In our size, we can see we have a drop down with the standard inch thread sizes, and we want to use a half 13 thread, so we'll select half 13. Our depth is going to be through all, and we want our thread to go through all as well. We've got the option for a near side and a far side countersink. So we're going to apply a near side and a far side countersink. That applies countersink on both sides of the hole. And then the next step is to select the positions. So by default, I've got one point wherever I selected the surface to pick the surface, and the point sketch tool is activated to drop more holes. Now obviously you would want to fully define the hole location before you exited this. However, I'm going to press escape to get out of my point command. I'm going to delete those holes that I just added. Let's spin around normal too, because we want to look at another sketch tool today. And that sketch tool is going to be the linear sketch pattern. If I select linear sketch pattern, with my point selected, I can define these holes to be 1 inch apart, and I want 9 holes. So I've patterned 9 holes. I'm going to select the Add Dimension tool and select OK. So what Add Dimension did was added a dimension automatically to my pattern. But you'll see the pattern can still sort of spin around, and all it's really done is locked into being 1 inch apart. So what we're going to do is make that middle hole located on the origin. Then I'm going to make the line that defines the pattern horizontal. Now we've spun that pattern around, you can see I can adjust my distance, and because we made the middle hole locked on the origin, our holes stay symmetrical around that origin. Had we wanted to start at one end, instead of locking the middle hole in the origin, I could have dimensioned the end hole in from the edge. With that complete, we can select OK and OK again. You can see we've now got our tapped holes running through the part file. You can see the little dotted line showing the tap drill diameter and then where the thread would be, plus our near side and far side countersinks. On our sidebar, we've got a half 13 tapped hole wizard that we could edit if we wanted to go in and change that information. Could also edit the positions. Okay, we're going to add a countersink hole as well to this, so let's select the top face of that lip, and then again select Features and select Hole Wizard. This time we want to select a countersunk hole, and we want to do a 1/4 inch countersink. And we've got our far side countersink already turned on. So we can now select Positions, select Normal to. Again, we're going to use the linear sketch pattern. Select the point that we want to pattern. This time we're going to do, again, say 4 inches apart. We want 4 holes 1 inch apart, and then we're going to select direction 2. We want 2 holes in that direction. Just enter a value of 2 inches so you can see them going up. We want them to go down, so I'll reverse the direction. And with that complete, I'll select OK. Now you'll see that this time I didn't add my dimension. I've got my whole pattern completely floating around. And there's a reason for that. I'm going to add 2 center lines, one right here and one right between these 2 edges. And now I can select this top corner point and make it on the midpoint of the line I just created. Then I'll select the bottom corner point and I'm going to make it on the midpoint of the other line. So now those stay centered. We can see that the rotation is still awfully awkward. So we want to make these lines horizontal with each other and these points vertical with each other to define the rotation of that whole pattern. Unfortunately, all that stuff doesn't happen automatically. You have to go in and add your relationships to the patterns after you use them. However, now that this is complete, it's centered on both sides. I'm going to add another center line kitty corner between them and create a midpoint relationship with the origin. So now our whole pattern stays symmetrical around the origin. The last thing I'm going to do is dimension the last hole in from the edge, 1/2 inch. So we've added a few parametrics here, and the purpose of these parametrics is if we change the size of our part, this whole pattern is going to maintain 4 equally spaced holes along both sides of our part, no matter how long or how wide the part is. Go ahead and accept that. We've got our holes on there. So let's just take a look at how the parametrics of our 2 different styles of linear sketch patterns worked. I select my part. I drag this part longer. So you can see that the whole pattern that I used to define the distance between each other is not changing because that distance is locked in, whereas the whole pattern that I used to define the 2 ends of the whole pattern maintains an equally spaced series of holes along our part. So depending on your design intent will depend on how you dimension your whole pattern after you create it. That concludes example 1, and I trust it was a help.